Marcotte or Lena Dunham, minus the weird things with her sister. I really could have been that kind of liberal, because that's the path I was headed down, because every leftist ideology I believed in, I fell for. And
except guns.
Okay, well, guns, I did retain some sanity, and the whole anti-gun thing never made sense to me. But in the wake of all the other stuff that I believed, that doesn't really make up for the fact that I was pretty much a dyed-in-the-wool leftist. And I was, pro-choice and against the war in Iraq. And it was Dave who challenged me, as conservatives do, with facts and logic and reason. And I hated it. I really did. We had some pretty epic, I guess you could call them fights, or very, very heated discussions, which, looking back at it now, we ended up, and he's sitting here and you should see the smile on his face, that Cheshire cat grin that he's got on his face right now. I wish we had video, because he is so amused with himself. And I would get really upset, but my arguments always boiled down to, well, I feel, and I think, and...
That's your opinion.
That's your opinion, and it was just... looking back on it now, I was mind-numbingly stupid, and I can't believe he tolerated it. Because I was pretty bad, and...
But he looked at you, though, and realized that you were, 22?
Yes, no.
21.
No, we met when I was 20. And then I turned
right.
21.
So, anybody that takes a 20-year-old very seriously, unless they have served 2 years in the military, because those guys mature much quicker. But for the rest of us who just go to college and live, let's face it, kind of poshy sort of lives, you're allowed to be a little idealistic still at 20.
Well, what's that saying? If you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart, and if you're not a conservative in your 30s, you have no brain.
Essentially.
Or something.
So
right.
basically what I said was that I was heartless but not stupid.
I don't think you could be heartless, but now that I've been converted, thanks to Dave, and it took a lot to break down that wall. So if there is a young liberal in your life who you think is just beyond obnoxious with their views, I would say don't give up on them, because eventually there will be a moment, and there were a couple for me where it was mostly interacting on early forms of social media. This was before Twitter, and I think it was even before Facebook, because Facebook came out in 2007.
Yeah.
No, Facebook came out in 2004.
2004. Okay, so it was after Facebook, but before Twitter. I was part of a message board, and I said something that wasn't, 100% leftist ideology, and I got attacked for it, and it was an eye-opening experience, and that was another one of the things, aside from the facts and the logic, that pushed me down the road to being a conservative. And then it was sort of that, even that was sort of a rebellion, because I went from really, really leftist to really, really right. And now I've kind of settled into, I don't want to say the middle, because that sounds like I'm undecided, but more libertarian than Republican. Conservative libertarian or conservatarian, I guess, is where I fall now. And I feel like I finally kind of found a place where I'm happy with the balance of my political views and my political life. So that is, in a nutshell, the story of how Dave created the conservative monster that
There are certain people who think I brainwashed her.
Yeah, and that was another one of the things that was an eye-opener, where the liberal friends in my circle, some of them believed, leftist friends, some of them believed that I wasn't doing any of this of my own free will, that I was being made to think this way by a man, which I found incredibly insulting, and a backhanded way of them saying that I was stupid. Because it is a way of saying that I'm stupid, because I couldn't come to those conclusions on my own because I'm a woman, and women are only supposed to think in a liberal, feminist, leftist kind of way. But because I am I believe, a genuinely tolerant person. I am still friends with these people, but we have agreed to disagree on our politics because some of them are still very, very leftist and liberal.
I think my favorite incident was when she thought George Bush was going to bring back the draft and worried that she was going to get drafted. And I broke it down for her with facts. I told her, look, Donald Rumsfeld was the man who actually ended the draft. He's not going to bring it back. He wanted an all-volunteer army. Secondly, the sponsors for this bill are all liberal Democrats, extremely liberal. And if they introduce this bill into the House, it will get steamrolled out of existence, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, and he showed me the text of the bill online where the D's were. And the thing is, and I should have looked it up, and I understand I didn't do my due diligence, but all of the professors at my college at the time were the ones who were saying, he's going to bring back the draft, and you're all going to have to serve, and blah, 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 blah. So the lying in order to push an agenda and make people think a certain way, because I believe me, even back then, I had the utmost respect for the military. My father is a Navy veteran. And my father-in-law, who I didn't know at the time, is a Navy veteran as well. I had friends who were in the National Guard. So I didn't dislike the military in the way that some leftists do, but it wasn't for me. Looking back on it now, I maybe regret that I didn't join a branch of the military, but I don't know if that's a decision that can be unmade now with everything else going on in my life. But yeah, so you were lied to believe a certain ideology, and that was another thing that made me change my views, because I didn't like being lied to, and I didn't like being hoodwinked into believing something that was easily, obviously, debunked by Dave. So there, in a not-so-short nutshell, is the story of how I became who I am, politically anyway. So
it's alive.
Yeah. So I am...
Yeah, it's a great story.
It is an interesting story, and I think that it's one that needs to be shared, because, like I said, and I have one specific person in mind. If there's a liberal who drives you nuts, a leftist who drives you nuts, don't give up on them, because eventually they will have the aha light bulb moment and start to come around, and something in their life will make them see why what they believe is not correct. And I'm being kind. But so yeah, there is the story of how I became a conservative. And I wanted to go back, because Laura, you had mentioned your time in France, and this wasn't in the original show post, but we have to talk about what happened today in France with the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists, and I hope I'm saying that right. I don't have a head for foreign languages like some other people do, but 12 people were killed by 2 gunmen this morning, their local time, who they had AK-47s because of the cartoons that this publication published. They being the attackers, were upset because the cartoons depicted the Prophet Muhammad. They were reportedly heard shouting, "The Prophet has been avenged," and ended up killing 2 people, including 2 police officers. And I'm looking at a report from the Daily Mail, and as of 8:16 Central Time, when they updated this story, they are still on the loose, the gunmen. I don't want to focus on I want to focus on what I had this rant on Twitter this morning about what I think one of the problems of this is. And I think one of the big problems that causes things like this is the West's tendency to be extremely politically correct on certain things.
I wanted to slap Ben Affleck 50 different ways.
Well, yeah, and we can bring that up, but I think that we have sort of taken it to a point where our deference as Western culture to other cultures, and in this case it's specifically some aspects of Islam. I want to be clear, it's not all, but there is some aspects of Islam where instead of expecting an acceptance of the culture in which they move to or which they are living in, we've turned a blind eye to the sort of their decision to live separately and to live in a way that is in conflict with our values and our laws as a Western society. And it's very, very sad, because it's 9 years ago now that there was the magazine, and I believe it was in Denmark, that published the cartoons, and there was the big brouhaha over that. And then we had the Everybody Draw Mohammed Day, and the cartoonist behind that, she's still in hiding because they issued a fatwa against her. And now we've got 12 people, including 4 prominent French cartoonists, who were gunned down today because they dared to satirize the Prophet Muhammad. And from what I have read about the magazine, they have satirized other religions as well.
It's a leftist magazine, not one that ordinarily get our sympathy or that we'd agree with, but we here in the U.S. at least we'd agree with them expressing their views, like we put up with the New Republic of the Nation here, or any kind of leftist publication. They have the right to express their views.
Well, Charlie Hebdo. Hebdo is it's hebdomadaire, which means weekly. So basically, it's just a weekly magazine.
Yeah.
Is it sort of like
what The Onion is? It's kind of like The Onion. There's actually a couple of it's satire. One thing that I talked about on Twitter here, just at the end of the day, French satire is not British satire, and it's not American satire. They like, okay, just a couple of facts. French politicians go to school to be politicians, okay? So they are kind of like our academics here. I mean, there's academics in French, but there's also politicians in France. In France, they think that it's hilarious. When Arnold Schwarzenegger got elected as governor of California, they died. They couldn't understand why he was qualified. It was just beyond them. Because they didn't, I mean, I had to explain it to I don't know how many people, but it's because we let anybody, we figure that there's nobody more important. And they still have, they say égalité, right, in their fraternité, égalité, liberté. Yeah, and I would say the French way if you want me to, but I kind of skip over that sometimes. I still speak French. My in-laws still live there. I mean, my husband is from France. Like he's French. My kids are half, and so they still have these kind of pseudo hierarchies, right? And they're very deferential, and so politicians are a huge target for satire. And they're also a Catholic-based society. They say they're laic, which is it's the secular, but they're, all their holidays, they take every Catholic holiday that exists off. And so there's still some of that. So you see a lot of these different things, the satire being used. There's a program that's hilarious on TV called Les Guignols, which are actually life-size puppets shaped into the characters of one of the guy that leads it is the popular, I think it's TF1, so TF1 channel newscaster, journalist. So it would be like Tom Brokaw sort of thing. And then they have different characters that come on and they mock everybody. They mocked Bush when I was living there. They have one for Obama. They have one for Hollande. They had one for Sarkozy. And then they had one for Chirac. It's mocking politics is sort of a sport over there. Okay. Well, we are reaching the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to have you hold that thought, Laura, and when we come back from our break, we'll continue talking about that shooting in France and some other issues sort of related to that free speech and cultural expression. So stick around. You're listening to the Modern Comments radio show here on Vigilant Liberty Radio, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Dustin Hoyt with America Our Way, and you can hear me right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio at 10/9 Central on Thursday nights. We bring you the best in political commentary from the right-wing, conservative, libertarian perspectives coming together and bringing the best content on the internet. Be sure to tune in every week for your favorite shows. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.